G'day guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to discuss the types of contracts in the industry. So basically, firstly, let's understand what contracts really are. So contracts are basically can be verbal or can be written. Verbal contracts usually are not probably the best way to go because they can just cause a huge amount of issues in later stage when people are sort of meant to be doing the works and they don't do. So it's a lot of hearsay, which you should avoid. You should really just have a written format of the contract, so you can, which entails exactly the scope of works, the time limitations, and a huge number of factors. So firstly, let's just see the types of contracts. These are all obviously pretty commercial contracts. They're used across in range of projects and residential, commercials, infrastructure projects. Everywhere you can basically use these contracts, and they are being used across the industry. There are a lot more contracts, but these are sort of the main contracts that people in the industry are using. So the first one is the GMP. We'll start with the easiest form of the contract. GMP is known as, or you can actually call it CC, which is cost to complete. But there is a tiny bit of difference in the both, so I'll tell you what it is. Basically, GMP, which stands for Guaranteed Maximum Price Contract, means that you are going to hire either a contractor as a developer, or you are going to hire as a contractor, your subcontractor, at a guaranteed maximum price, which means that there is going to be a price cap and usually there is also a time-bound limitation as well. So you should have the works finished in X amount of time for X amount of dollars. Now these two, time usually is pretty hard to determine. It can go off the charts, sometimes blow up because of different numerous things. But the cost in guaranteed maximum price contract is capped. So you aren't the contractor, if they go over the cost, think about it as being a developer. If you hired a contractor and on a guaranteed maximum price contract, and the contract has exceeded the value of the works that are being completed on site, that's completely the contractor's interest. So they are going to borne that cost. If it does not go over and the project finishes in a really good and sufficient time manner and also in less cost, then that cost also again goes into the pocket of the contractor. Now, this is a very generic sort of nature of this contract. There are a lot of negotiations behind the doors, so there would be some sort of developers who are looking at this being like, oh, that's not true. It's actually the generic form of the contract, and you can negotiate other ways to do it within this contract, but that's what it means, guaranteed maximum price. Another one is cost to complete. Now, cost to complete contracts are again the same thing, but there isn't a money cap to it. Again, there is a time cap to it, but there is no money cap. So if the project expends more costs, then that cost needs to come from somewhere. And it's basically negotiated between the developer to the contractor, or to the contractor to their subcontractors. Okay, so that's the first. Actually, those are the two different sort of types of contracts, but they sum up in one category. Your next type of contract which is a extremely popular contract, D&C contract, which is design and construct contract, or CO, which is construct only contract. Now, both of these contracts can be done. These are more sort of the subcategories of the contract instead of being the actual contract itself. Why I say that is because you can actually get D&C works incorporated with a guaranteed maximum price or cost to complete sort of thing as well. So you can end up in a guaranteed maximum price contract, which I have done in the past for a developer, and also be doing it design and construct, which means the contractor takes the obligation of design and construction works. The construction only, which is CO, means that all the documents are going to be, the design documents are going to be provided by the developer to the contractor, so they can go ahead and finish those works. Now, there is a risk in the middle over there for the developer that if there are any design details that are missed in this in this whole scenario, then that cost is essentially borne by the developer. If there are some design issues or design details that are missing in the document of construction only contract, then the developer has to pay for those costs as a variation. We are going to go in more detail about variation in the next video for people who don't know what variations are. So essentially that's what design and construct only is. The other contract is known as lump sum contract. Now, this is probably one of the most used contract in construction industry, lump sum contracts, which means that the developer is going to, or the contractor is going to hire the contractor or the subcontractor respectively in an order that they will provide them, say for example, cost to complete, to pour a concrete slab or to construct this particular building for a developer in certain style, certain design docs, blah blah blah, for a value of say $10 million. Now the main part here is the lump sum, which means that the contractor must finish all these works in $10 million. Obviously, if there are variations, if the developer is like, nah, I need to change this, I need to change that, depending on the design docs, then they basically have to just finish that contract in the given price. So that's what lump sum is. There are times to it. In every contract there are times. So every contract is going to be time bound, that you have to finish the project in a certain time period. That could be dependent on the scope of works, essentially. So the developer at the start of the project usually, or the contractor goes out and sort of does a prelim estimation of the project, which will tell them sort of what the costs are going to be, what their monetary values to the contract are going to be, so then they can come back again, punch in those numbers and test the feasibility of the project. We're going to actually go into more detail about feasibility in some of my other videos, but this video is completely focused on contracts. So let's get back on track. So then, yeah, your guaranteed maximum price, cost to complete, lump sum, design to construct, and construct only. Then what other, there are obviously a lot more contracts that people usually sort of go by, dependent on what they want. For example, there is also time and material contract, which means that that's more sort of like resi based. This one, it's lower tiers for tier 4s and your tier 5s, which are like, so what happens in those sort of contracts is that you would hire, say for example, for a bathroom reno. This is for someone who's like looking for, say, bathroom reno, or is wanting to just get like certain extension to the house, or is just looking for those minor little works which are only going to be about sort of your 5 to 10k range, maybe 20k range. Really nothing gets done in 10k these days. So you are more looking for a time and material cost, where you're going to tell the subcontractor, hire them at your risk and sort of your knowledge, give them a scope of works and tell them that, look, I need this bathroom renovated in 2 weeks, and you need to supply me with the labor, and I will give you the materials, and then we'll get the thing done. So usually in those contracts, like I said, they're used more by the your lower tier level contracts. Now, coming to probably one of the major contracts, really big contracts, commercial contracts, is your PPP, which is public-private partnership. So, as the word suggests, as the sort of the contract name suggests itself, this is more based as a partnership contract. So what happens in these contracts is that there is going to be a public division in the contract, which could be your stake. You could have multiple stakeholders, which means stakeholders basically means that not shareholders, stakeholders. Stakeholders means that you're going to have multiple stakeholders in a project. Any party that has an invested interest in that project, that could be your that could be the government, to the public, which is your normal people, general around it, or the contractor, the banks, everyone, sort of anyone who has an interest in that project counts as a stakeholder. So this one involves 3 different types of stakeholders, basically involves all the people in the project, which is, in your public comes the government, and then in comes so there's the government, then there's also the people who are going to be affected by that project. For example, the easiest example would be building a new tram line, building a new sort of tunnel, or building a new bridge, for example, or toll road. These are all public-private partnerships. So public being the government who has planned the project, and the public, as in the general public, who has an invested interest as being the sort of taxpayer, because that's where the projects are getting funded from. And then comes your second P, which is private, so the private entity who do these projects, who are big infrastructure companies, which are sort of your ASICON, CPB, Lang Royal. I'm not sure if they're around anymore or not, but like, you know, those sort of big companies. John Holland, they are the private entity in this project. So again, public, private, which is your construction firms, and a partnership. So they're both, when they both sort of have a partnership agreement where the public is going to, the government is going to provide the money, the monetary value of the project, and the private sector, which is going to provide the technology, and is going to provide the materials, and is going to provide the labor, and is going to take the risk of the project, and is going to manage the project, and is going to do basically everything. We are going to go in more detail about this public-private partnership contract. I'll do a different video now when I think about it, because there's actually a lot to cover in this. A lot, I mean all the delays. I won't really go into it at the moment. So that's what public-private partnership is. So basically, these are the major forms of contracts. You can have more contracts where, sort of, say for example, just a supply agreement. If the contractors out there who are new contractors who are wanting to understand that a bit better, so, or even developers, where there is going to be a contract where you're just going to have your supply to the site, which is, for example, if you're pouring a concrete, you need a slab, you need concrete, so who's going to supply that? Get a concrete supply contract. Usually you shouldn't really break it down. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. That's for another video. And depends on the strategy of that company. So all your tier 1s and tier 2s, and even probably tier 3s who are listening, they all have different interests and different strategies as to why they want to have a supply agreement, what supply agreement they want to account for. I worked for sort of like the 2 and 3 people in this industry, 2 or 3 companies, and from tier 1 all the way down to tier 3. I'm somewhere in the higher tier 2s at the moment, so I'm seeing there's a lot of sort of the companies do a lot of different things. Your tier 1s will do supply agreements for different reasons, and your tier 2 will do for different, tier 3 will do for different. It all just really basically comes down to the strategy, instead of actually the to pertain the exact value of that contract, as opposed to just putting that supply agreement in place. So you just need to really understand strategically why you need that supply agreement, and what other agreements do you have in place that are going to support the supply agreement for you to go ahead and move and, you know, get better results in your project. Then your minor agreements, your major agreements is just all sort of like depends on how the companies really want to set up. But what happens is, another part of the contractual world is when you have a contract with the government, this again just sort of more depends on where and who you're working for. If you're working for the private sector, for a developer, a lot of your contract is just really going to be based on your lump sum. But if you're working for the government, your contracts could be governed by sort of, there still are the kind of basic lump sum contracts. That doesn't go away. Let me correct myself, yes. So those contractual obligations still don't go away. The basic sort of contracts still stay the same, which is your D&C or your construction only. With the government, an additional bear is sort of like, say, how they need a house or something to be constructed in AS2124. It's an Australian standard. I'm not going to get into it. It's pretty boring as well. I don't think there's a lot of people actually out there, government people, who are doing this anyways. Maybe there are, I'm not too sure. But when I started out, AS2124 was really big. There was GC21, which is used massively in ACT and in your Sydney industries. So GC21 is what governments use basically. So government puts these contracts in place on top of this sort of the generic contracts because they want to assert a certain level of governance over these projects, and they want them to be compliant to the National Construction Code, which is the NCC or BCA building codes. In general, these contracts are basically just used by the government. Then the private developers and sort of side of things, they don't really want to know about the AS2124 or the GC21. There are actually a lot of more contracts. I think there's different Australian standards, right? There are Australian standards for everything. So these standards are put in place by the government, by the building regulatories, to make sure that the product of the building industry is going to be delivered in a certain quality standard. All the projects are delivered in the same standard, and there aren't any sort of hiccups in the projects in terms of quality. I'm emphasizing quality a lot in this video, and you'll see me emphasizing that a lot in other videos, because that basically is that's one of the 4 principles of the construction industry. So construction industry, again, operates on 4 principles, which is your first thing is M, then your T, then you come to Q, then you go to S, and they all are quite interrelated. This whole thing is interrelated. M standing for money, monetary side, time side, quality side, safety side. If one of these things is being compromised, your project is basically going to go to shit. Sorry to say that, but it's not going to deliver in the way it's meant to be. Everyone has to make sure. That's why the construction teams or the development sides or wherever they are, all these 4 branches of the construction industry need to be taken care of, because if one of them lacks, your project really is going to lack. It's going to have severe cost implications, severe time implications. It's going to, there's going to be massive issues. So just, it needs to be done properly, and the way to do it properly is to have all these 4 standards in place. So for your developers listening, you need to make sure that the contractor that you have hired knows all these factors, because there are a lot of contractors out there who are not doing it correctly. They have gotten their licenses somehow, I'm not sure how they have, but they're definitely not doing it right. For people who are contractors, I'm sure that if they're good contractors, they already know about this principle, and the contractors who are just starting out new, they do need to know about these factors, because they're obviously very, very important, like I said. And for your comes to your general public, people like people who aren't affiliated with the industry and actually don't have any idea, just make sure when you're doing your sort of, when you're doing your budgets, or when you're doing your planning in place of the small renos, big renos, whatever you are wanting to do, or if you have hired a builder who's going to do it for you, just ask him these questions. Ask him about what is the monetary side of things? How much am I paying? Why am I paying you this much? Why can't I pay you that much? Now, you know what, like a lot of the in resi industry I've realized, and when I was a kid, my dad had, and my family had to go through this as well. They sort of were told by the builder that, look, this is the way it's going to be done, or it's not going to be done. I tell to those builders that I'm going to walk out. So you should actually just walk out of the door. You shouldn't just stay there. If he tells you that it's only going to be done this way and no other way, then you should walk out, or you should actually book a consultation with me, you know. But yeah, to look at the monetary side of things, because at the end of the day, it's your hard-earned money. It's not just coming out of nowhere. It's not coming out of thin air. So tell the builder, make him accountable for the monetary side of the things. Make him accountable for the time side of things. There is a really good TikToker, I can't remember his name, but he goes around and inspects different properties and sort of tells people what's wrong with it and what's right with it, being that monetary, you know, he's really good. If you look at his TikTok, he'll tell you exactly what should have been done here, what should have sort of the more of the technical aspects, in such that when you're on site and on paper, this is more like the commercial side of things, the feasibility, the finance, etc. But there is another side to construction, which is your on-site works, which is actually very, very, very important to understand as well. So maybe get that guy out, you know, he might be able to help you. The time implications is where I was. So just make sure that the builder understands what the time implications are going to be, because you're not going to wait around for 5 years to build a house that you should have been in a year or maybe a year and a half. I also do know some really good builders who are doing some amazing works, and they're, you know, delivering the projects very, very quickly. Then comes your queue, and making sure that your money doesn't just buy you time, but it also buys you quality, because you need quality products at the end of the day. And it's all done in a safe way, because if it's not done in a safe way, WorkSafe, which is a regulatory government body, is going to just come out and shut you down. They're not going to let you build anything until that thing is rectified, or if it, I hope it doesn't happen, but if it goes where there's people injured, or, you know, they've died, because that's what has happened in the industry previously, then they'll definitely just put a stop works, probably give you penalties. There could be severe, you know, implications to it. So yeah, definitely make sure that you do look at those 4 things, and all 4 things are bound in these contracts. They're all highlighted in the contract. They should be clearly stated as to what the contract should state. What's the monetary value of the contract? It's going to cost me $1 million to build that. Is it going to cost me $10 million or $100 million? What's the time limit? If I'm giving you $100 million, it should be, you know, basically, yes, sometimes it happens that money buys time. That's what you want. And again, then you get a higher return on it. So when you have a higher value of money invested into that project, then you should get a quicker turnaround, but also not compromising the quality and safety at the same time. They're all 4 of these factors, the 4 pillars of the construction industry. It should be highlighted very, very clearly in all contracts, no matter what it is. So at the basic, if you are looking for something, definitely look for these 4 things. Even make the builder accountable, sit down with him, developer, if you guys are listening, make the builder accountable. Builders, if you're listening, make the subcontractor accountable, and so on. So yeah, definitely look into that. Now, there's one very, very important thing in contracts, which is known as the deed of agreement. This is more of a commercial stuff. So deed of agreement, or deed of anything, basically, there are different deeds: deed of warranty, deed of release, deed of collateral warranty. There are multiple kinds of deeds. I will go through all of them as well. So deeds basically is the highest form of contract. Anything, when it says deed, is locked, it's set, it has to have some value to it. So for example, deed of warranty or deed of release, what it means is, for developers who are new to this industry, they should know, or the subcontractors as well, when the contractors are giving you the contract, you should know what it means. So deed of I'm going to actually go through that in a different video, but deed of agreement, just understand for this video, is the highest form of contract. That's what it is. So there's nothing over deed. When you go to a court, if you have a claim, if you have a dispute, and you have signed something as, say, a deed of, that said deed of something, and you haven't fulfilled that obligation, you are bound by that obligation. You have to fulfill that. You need to understand that, what that means, and you need to understand what you need to do to fulfill that in a way that the dispute doesn't occur, and you don't have to go to court and face all these extra charges, hire extra lawyers, and then, you know, so forth and so on. So make sure you understand that. I will explain what the other deeds are, because there are a bunch of deeds. There is deed of warranty, deed of release, deed of collateral warranty. Then there's deed of delayed damages, deed of liquidated damages. I mean, there is a huge amount of stuff in the contract. So developers listening out there as well, they need to ensure that these steps are, or these sort of things are being understood and followed. You can obviously hire a lawyer as well, but I'm giving you free information, so you can come to me for consultation as well. Probably not at the moment, but yeah. So basically, I think that's what the types of contracts are. So you can go ahead and punch away with your contracts. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.